Tyrone Holloway wasn't just another detective on the force. He was the one they called when no one else could stomach the crime scene. The one with the eyes that didn't blink, who could walk into a room soaked in blood and still notice the photograph turned upside down, the window left unlocked from the outside. That night he had just left the station, trench coat soaked with city rain, his badge still clipped to his belt, visible, gleaming under the orange glow of the parking lot light. Saw it, didn't you? That security cam footage that flickered to life like a cursed VHS, audio distorted, colors slightly off, as if even the lens didn't want to watch what came next. A voice, aggressive, slurred, sliced through the static. Hands where I can see 'em. Then a gun drawn, fast like it had been waiting for this moment. Not hesitation, anticipation. Tyrone's voice, calm, reasoned, with that same unshakable cool that had solved 23 unsolvable cases. I'm a detective. Badge right here. But the officer never looked. He was too busy rewriting reality. This is where it gets hard to breathe, not because of the gun, not even because of the shaking voice that followed. Tyrone's, now quieter, broken at the edges, but because you see the fear in the eyes of someone who never showed fear before. Because for one long second, you catch the way the light bends wrong around the two men, the shadow that stretches from Tyrone's feet, only it's not his shape. And if you slow the video frame by frame, you'll notice something no one on the news picked up on. Blink, not in his eyes but in the air behind him. Like a glitch, like something stepped out or in. A woman screams off camera, but the subtitles don't catch what she says. You only hear it once if you've got headphones. She doesn't scream stop or help or call someone. She screams a name. Alma Tyrone freezes. The cop does too. Their breath fogs in the air, and that's when you realize the temperature dropped 15 degrees in seconds. Confirmed by the weather app. Go check it. The footage skips again, but this time it isn't a skip. It's a silence so loud it eats the city around it. No cars, no dogs barking. Just the weight of something watching. Then Tyrone says something, just 2 words, but they're whispered like a confession to a grave. The mic doesn't catch it. No one hears what he says. Except you. Because when you watched this for the 3rd time at 2:43 a.m., your phone froze, turned black, and your own reflection mouthed the same 2 words he did. You tried to tell yourself it was nothing, a trick of the light, stress, maybe a hallucination, but you've been saying the words ever since in your sleep, haven't you? That's when he vanished. Not ran, not arrested, vanished. One frame he's there. The next the badge hits the pavement like a broken memory. And the cop, eyes wide, shaking, drops the gun and mutters, "She said he'd come back. She said when he heard his name he'd remember." Who is she? No one asked. No one dares. And now that you've seen this, now that you've felt it, you know what the rest of the world refuses to. This wasn't about race. Not anymore. This was about something buried deeper than any crime. Something that rewrites who we are when we look too closely. But ask yourself this. Why did Tyrone call his voicemail from a disconnected number yesterday? Why did he leave a message only you can hear? And why does he sound exactly like you? Tyrone's voicemail wasn't supposed to exist. You've played it back over and over, like some kind of forbidden mantra, each time feeling the knot tighten in your chest. His voice, low and almost hesitant, cuts through the static with a clarity that the video could never capture. He says your name. No, not your name exactly, something like it, but twisted, like a half-remembered dream or a phrase clawed out of silence. "Remember the night?" he whispers. Then a crackle, a pause, and a sudden shiver in the recording that sounds less like interference and more like a warning. That message isn't just a clue. It's a riddle wrapped in a warning written in the language of lost things. And suddenly you're not sure if you're listening to Tyrone or some echo of him, trapped inside a ghost, trapped inside a machine. But here's the thing. The footage you saw, the moment Tyrone vanished, the breathless silence, the eerie chill in the air, was it even real? Your mind tries to fold the pieces together, but something slips through the cracks. You remember sitting in your chair, the phone pressed against your ear, the walls suddenly too close, your heartbeat loud enough to drown out the world. Then a cut in memory, like a page torn out of a diary you never wrote. You ask yourself, did you really hear the name Alma? Or was it something your mind conjured when the audio glitched, the software eating the sound into something your brain translated in its own terrifying way? When you play the clip on another device, the name is gone. Just static, the same dull hum a broken record makes when it's stuck on a loop. You try again the next day. No whisper. You're losing pieces of the story before you can even hold them. And then there's the man who calls himself Dr. Felix Lane. You met him 2 days after the clip went viral. He found you first, not the other way around. He shows up with the kind of calm that feels too rehearsed, like he stepped out of a nightmare where everything is just too perfect. His eyes don't meet yours straight on, and when they do, there's a flicker, like he's searching for something beyond your face, something buried deep inside the dark folds of your mind. "You're not crazy," he says softly, voice smooth but fractured, like glass trying to hold water. "Not yet, but you're close." He carries a worn leather satchel, pulling out a handful of cassette tapes. "Listen to these," he says. "They'll help you understand what's really going on." You hesitate, because the idea of trusting stranger who's already bending your reality feels reckless, but the loneliness in his tone cracks open something inside you that wants answers. Any answers. You take a tape, put it in an old player he offers, and the voice that emerges is Tyrone's, but a whisper tangled in static like a secret buried beneath decades of dust. The words don't make sense at first. Snippets of confessions, fragments of voices you swear you recognize but can't place. One voice pleads for forgiveness, another warns against remembering too much. You press pause, rewind, play again, but the message remains locked in riddles. The next time you see Dr. Lane, he confesses, almost casually, that Tyrone wasn't the first to disappear this way. There was another, years ago, and before that, a string of them. Each case buried or ignored, whispered about in corners but never put on record. "It's a real unsolved mystery," he says, eyes distant. Something ancient beneath the bog city, feeding on the memories no one dares to speak aloud, the truth behind what no one tells you. You want to ask more? What exactly does that mean? But his phone rings, sharp and unexpected, slicing the moment into fragments, and when he hangs up, he's different. Distracted, like he's running from something unseen. Your own reflection begins to betray you. You catch glimpses, when you're sure you're alone, of a shadow behind you in the mirror, a flicker of movement that disappears when you blink. Your dreams twist into something darker, a baby whispering the name Alma, a long-dead relative's voice crackling through your radio, a phone ringing in the middle of the night with no caller on the line, and worst of all, gaps in your memory grow longer. You can't remember where you left your keys, the face of someone you just spoke to, even what you had for breakfast. But you remember the feeling, an oppressive weight pressing just behind your eyes, a sense of someone watching, waiting for you to forget something vital. And that's when the paranoia settles in. Every time you try to talk about Tyrone, about the disappearance, you hit a wall. Friends and family dodge your questions, their eyes glossed with something like pity or fear. Someone close to you said, "Stop chasing shadows. Some things are better left buried." But you can't. There's a hunger growing in you, clawing at the edges of your sanity, driven by fragments of recordings, half-remembered names, and the knowledge that what you thought was the whole truth was only the surface of something darker. Is Tyrone still out there? Did he vanish because of the cop or because of something older, something no one in the department is ready to admit? And if the city is swallowing people whole, rewriting history one erased memory at a time, then who or what is the one holding the pen? You glance back at the tapes Dr. Lane gave you. The one marked Alma has started to play on its own, crackling through your speakers, filling the room with the same eerie silence from the footage. And then through the static, a voice, soft, almost maternal, sings a lullaby you haven't heard since childhood. Your breath catches. The voice says your name again, and this time you swear it's calling you home. What they don't want you to remember is buried in those sounds, in those lost moments between what's real and what's gone. But digging deeper feels like pulling on a thread that could unravel everything you know. Your mind, your memories, your very existence. And when the shadows in the mirror start to answer back, you realize the real unsolved mystery isn't Tyrone's disappearance. It's whether you're the next to vanish into the silence no one dares to name. And so you ask yourself, in the dark, alone, if you can't trust your own mind, what truth are you holding on to? And what truth is holding on to you? You finally found it, the thread you'd been clawing at, the faint outline in the fog of your mind that promised a way out of the maze. The truth was there, tucked inside the basement archives of the police department, buried beneath layers of dust. Old case files and bureaucratic apathy. The faded folder marked Case 1437 Holloway Disappearance was cracked open before you, its edges worn like the pages of a book read too many times. And for the first time, something about it clicked. You weren't crazy. They lied to you. The notes scribbled in the margins, the odd placement of documents, the almost invisible redactions in ink that smeared when touched, all pointed to one chilling conclusion. Tyrone had been targeted long before that night, not just because of who he was, but because of what he stumbled upon. The deeper you dug, the clearer it became that the disappearance wasn't an isolated incident. It was a repetition of an older, darker event, a memory glitch replaying itself, like a cursed loop no one wanted to acknowledge. You found the report, yellowed and fragile, from nearly 50 years ago. It told the story of Detective Samuel Whitman, a man whose name vanished from every public record shortly after a similar incident, a chilling echo of Tyrone's case. Whitman had also been accused of something he didn't do, cornered by a cop who didn't want to listen. The parallels hit like a gut punch. Whitman's last known case involved a child named Alma, the same name whispered in the static of Tyrone's disappearance. A baby, they said, who spoke words she couldn't have known, whose cries stopped every time someone uttered that name. The file described how Whitman vanished during a routine call, leaving behind only his badge and a cryptic note that read, "They are watching." Your hands trembled as you traced the lines of ink, realizing this wasn't history. It was a prelude, a map to what had been unfolding in your own life for weeks. The hidden truth was starting to unravel. You reached out to old contacts, former officers who remembered Whitman, and one by one, their voices grew hesitant, eyes darting away as if recalling something they'd buried deep. They told you stories of a force so insidious it slipped through cracks in memory, erasing its tracks like smoke through fingers, something that fed on fear and confusion, making the sane question their own sanity. But the worst part wasn't the force itself. It was the way it nested inside people, twisting relationships, eroding trust, planting seeds of doubt where there should have been clarity. You felt it in your own chest, the tightness that had nothing to do with anxiety, but something older, like a warning carved into your bones. For a moment you thought you'd beaten it. That understanding would bring you peace, but peace was a lie wrapped in silence, because as you pieced together the past and the present, you noticed something chilling, a detail no one seemed to have caught. The baby Alma, whose name had become a lifeline in this tangled web, wasn't just a victim. Her cries, her whispered words were the earliest signs of something watching, something waiting, something that had been there since before Whitman's disappearance, before Tyrone's, watching from the shadows, not just in the city streets but inside the very edges of your perception. A presence that wasn't bound by time or space, but by memory itself. That night, alone in your apartment, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew thick, almost electric, as if the walls themselves remembered something too terrible to speak aloud. The lullaby from the tapes played again, soft and distant at first, then swelling until it filled every corner of the room. You wanted to turn it off, to shut out the noise, but you couldn't, because beneath the melody was a whisper you hadn't heard before, a voice that slipped past your defenses and nestled inside your mind. It was a name, but not Alma's. Something else. Something ancient and patient. The kind of name that, if spoken aloud, could undo the fragile thread holding your reality together. Then the lights flickered. Just for a second, but long enough for the shadow in the corner of your room to stretch impossibly tall, like a dark tower reaching toward the ceiling. You blinked, and it was gone, but the cold it left behind seeped into your skin. You weren't alone. You had never been alone, and the truth you thought you uncovered was only the surface of a deeper, more dangerous secret. A secret so personal it felt like it was carved from your own lost memories. You grabbed your phone to call Dr. Lane, but the screen went black before you could dial. The tapes stopped playing on their own, silence swallowing. The room whole. Your reflection in the dark screen stared back at you, but for a moment it wasn't yours. The eyes were too old, too knowing, and filled with a dread that made your stomach twist. You realized then that every piece of this story, the video, the tapes, the whispered names, was a puzzle designed to pull you in deeper, to make you see what they wanted you to see, to remember what they wanted you to remember. But somewhere beneath it all, something else was watching, something that had been watching since the beginning, feeding on the cracks in your mind and the fractures in the truth, and now it's watching you. As the weight of that realization settles, you understand that the mystery isn't just unsolved, it's unsolvable. That every answer leads to more questions. That the story you thought you knew is a lie layered over another lie. And beneath that, something so dark it's been waiting for you to forget it so it can claim you next. You sit back, heart hammering, as the screen flickers again, and you catch a glimpse of a face, familiar but impossible, smiling in the shadows behind you. Then the screen goes black. You have to watch it all again, because now you know nothing here is what it seemed, and you're only just beginning to understand how deep this nightmare runs. The room grows darker around you, the shadows folding, like heavy curtains that block out everything you once trusted about your own reality. But you are not alone. Not truly. Somewhere beyond the fractured edges of this story, others have been watching, waiting. Not just witnesses or victims, but carriers of the same burden you now bear. People whose memories tangle and dissolve, in the same unspeakable way, whose nightmares bleed into the waking world, with a clarity that cuts deeper than any rational explanation. You were right all along. This isn't just your story. It's a thread pulled through the lives of many, a hidden truth binding the fragmented pieces of lives scattered across time and space. And now, as the walls close in, those others reach out. Not in voices, but in symbols, whispers, and flickering signals that slip just beneath the surface of your perception, challenging everything you thought you knew about identity and control. It begins subtly, a flash of an image on a cracked screen, too quick to process but impossible to dismiss. A symbol, almost like a sigil, carved in light and shadow. The same mark appears in places you've never been. Graffiti on a rundown wall in a city thousands of miles away. The emblem on an old photograph you find buried in a thrift store album. A recurring shape in the corner of your dreams that wakes you in a cold sweat. You begin to notice these signs everywhere, too deliberately placed to be coincidence, yet hidden in plain sight as if daring you to decode them. They are messages, fragmented and cryptic, left by others who have been touched by the same darkness, signaling that you are not isolated in this unraveling world. The truth behind what no one tells you, the things they don't want you to remember, circulates through these echoes, a secret language only the initiated can begin to understand. Night. After night, shared dreams pull you deeper into this waking nightmare. Faces you recognize, some familiar, others strange, appear in fleeting moments of clarity, speaking in riddles about the past and future, about forgotten names and places that pulse with significance you can almost grasp. These dreams don't feel like dreams at all but like fractured memories stolen from someone else's life, overlapping with your own, until the boundaries of your identity begin to blur. Who are you in this web? What are you meant to see, and more disturbingly, what are you meant to forget? The sense of being watched intensifies, but this watcher is no passive observer. There is a force here, unseen yet palpable, threading its influence through your mind and those of countless others, a presence orchestrating not just the story, but your very perception of it. Then, just as the dread reaches a fever pitch, a new perspective emerges. A third voice that cuts through the haze with a cold, unflinching clarity that unsettles you to your core. This observer claims to have seen the story from the outside, watching the spiral of events unfold like a live broadcast of a conspiracy buried deep beneath the surface of everyday life. They speak of found footage from 20 years ago, videos the government never released, recordings that show faces and places connected by more than coincidence, evidence of a pattern stitched into history itself. They speak not as a narrator but as someone who has been part of this hidden world, someone who carries the scars of knowledge too heavy to bear without warning others. Yet their reliability is as fractured as the memories you chase. Their words come wrapped in riddles and half-truths, their motives shadowed by the same paranoia that grips you. Are they the one telling the truth, or just another piece of the puzzle warped by the same force that distorts your own grasp on reality? The blue lines between friend and foe, witness and conspirator, blur as this figure offers glimpses of hope while pulling you further into the dark. Their presence is a tether, a thin lifeline of possibility in a world where certainty is an illusion, and control is an ever-shifting mirage. Throughout it all, the question looms larger and darker. What is the nature of the force manipulating you, and how far does its reach extend? Is it a collective memory slipping through cracks in time, a consciousness born of trauma and fear, or something altogether more sinister and personal? The dread is not just about what is hidden, but about what lies within you. The fractured self, the flickering identity caught between what you remember and what has been forced upon you. You begin to wonder if control was ever yours, or if you have been nothing more than a shadow on the wall, a player in a story scripted long before you ever opened the file. And as you sit on the edge of understanding, the weight of all that remains, unseen, presses down, thick and suffocating. The watchers are many, their messages persistent yet elusive, pulling you toward a truth so vast it threatens to shatter the fragile peace you've grasped. There is no final revelation here, only the slow, grinding realization that the story never ends, and you, along with the others, are trapped in the pulse of something alive, something watching, always watching. From just beyond the veil of memory and reality, the screen flickers once more, and for a moment you think you see a face staring back. Not yours, not theirs, but something else entirely. Then it vanishes, leaving only the echo of a question hanging heavy in the air. What if the story is not about finding the truth, but about learning to live with the secrets they will never let you forget? In the stillness that follows, when the world feels suspended between heartbeat and breath, the question shifts from what happened to why it happened. Not the events, those are mere shadows cast by deeper currents, but the purpose beneath the shadows, the raw pulse of humanity laid bare in the fractures of memory and fear. The truth the story has led to is no longer an external puzzle to solve, but a mirror held up to the soul, reflecting something uncomfortable, raw, and unspoken. The fragile, desperate need to be seen, to be known, to understand the chaos within and without. In this twilight, the main character, Malcolm, stands at the edge of everything, trembling with the weight of a revelation so profound that it threatens to undo him or set him free, depending on the fragile belief he chooses to hold on to. Malcolm's hands shake as he grips the worn letter found tucked inside a forgotten book, words scrawled in a trembling script, a confession soaked in pain and regret. It's not a confession of guilt in the way the world expected, but a confession of the invisible scars carried for decades, the quiet wounds inflicted by a system that never saw him as human. and a society that whispered lies louder than any truth. This letter is a fragment of a past he never dared confront, a truth that is less about blame and more about survival, less about enemies and more about the internal battle each of us fights in the silence of our minds. Why did this happen to me? He whispers into the darkness. But the answer is not found in the who or the what. It is in the how we live with what we cannot change. It's a question about identity, about the fractures in trust and memory that ripple through generations, about the weight of stories left untold and the unbearable loneliness of being misunderstood. It's about the thin line between justice and vengeance, between being seen as a threat and being seen as a person. Malcolm's eyes glisten with tears, not just of sorrow, but of a fierce, aching hope that maybe, just maybe, understanding this pain can break the cycle rather than perpetuate. But as the letter slips from his fingers, the room tilts, the walls breathe, and the comforting illusion of clarity shatters. The truth, he realizes, might not be a cure, but a wound reopened, a fire ignited that could consume everything he thought he was. To hold on to the truth is to risk losing the fragile pieces of himself still intact. To deny it is to live forever, in the shadow of fear and silence. The choice is terrifying in its simplicity, to face the abyss or to turn away and pretend the story ends here. And in that moment, every suppressed memory, every whispered name, every unseen watcher feels like a heartbeat away from unraveling the very fabric of his being. The confession is raw, unpolished, a bleeding wound exposed to the light, and Malcolm's vulnerability becomes a universal echo. It's a reminder that beneath every mystery lies a human soul grappling with existence, a soul fractured by injustice, yet stubbornly clinging to hope. The story's climax is not a crescendo of action, but a quiet reckoning, a moment where the noise fades, and what remains is the weight of being alive in a world that often refuses to recognize your humanity. As Malcolm steps back from the edge of this revelation, the air thick with the scent of rain and forgotten dreams, the camera lingers on his face, a mosaic of pain, defiance, and fragile hope. The room is silent, except for the soft hum of a world waking up from a long, uneasy sleep. And just as the screen begins to fade, a voice, almost a whisper, carries through the stillness. Some truths don't want to be found, but they demand to be felt. The screen cuts to black, leaving the viewer suspended between the haunting beauty of understanding and the unsettling question of what comes next. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.